And Mark says for $10, Script Doctor, you said on a recent Midnight's Edge episode that the 90s Spider-Man cartoon wasn't as good as it could have been. I'm curious to know your thoughts on what worked and what could have been better.
Well, the voice cast worked really well. Excellent voice cast, very memorable. What 90s Spider-Man cartoons suffered the most was that it almost had no budget. Like it had to reuse a lot of scenes. It actually also reused a lot of audio recordings from other episodes because they really could not afford extra days for those actors to come in and record other stuff. There's a clip out on YouTube. I can't remember where it is, but you can find it where Peter Parker repeats the "with great power comes great responsibility" line, and they're identical. It's like one recording just played over and over, like the Roadrunners beep beep. Like it's what they did at that point, and it's what makes the show suffer. It's also far more on the soap opera side of drama from the cartoon than other ones that came out of that point. I really enjoyed the Greg Weisman Spectacular Spider-Man series. It was far more concise. It actually had a bit more of a budget because again, it was under Disney Marvel at the time before they axed it to do their new stuff. But yeah, it also it's episodic stories. It was trying to do serialized stories as well. It was back and forth. It's still enjoyable to a degree, but it does not hold up as well as other cartoons at the time, like say X-Men, Batman the Animated Series, even like Freakazoid is way better and holds up better today than those Spider-Man ones. Also, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, because of the contract they had with Marvel, and I also believe with Fox Kids, they could not do proper fist fights. And they had to replace all the guns with energy weapons and laser blasts, whereas Batman could still use like real-looking guns and throw punches and
the Punisher was just neutralizing vampires. Let's not forget about that. I'm sure. Chuck, I see your smile right there, right away. I'm sure that must have irked you even at the time, as one of the greatest Punisher writers there ever was.
What are you asking me?
Yeah, no,
I don't know if you can answer that.
Spider-Man
You just made a statement.
which the Punisher couldn't shoot. And he couldn't shoot at criminals. He was like neutralizing vampires.
He was Punisher.
They always want to neuter him. So, I mean, they've made every effort. Marvel doesn't like the Punisher. I mean, let's face it. They wish he'd never been created.
Which is tragic because he's a very complex and interesting character. And I also think that he's right where he needs to be. And I think the only egregious aspect is when DC tries to make Batman into the Punisher.
Not only that, I'd argue the Punisher was a bit ahead of its time as character because, like, he almost fits perfectly into the 80s, but he kind of predates some of that stuff in a way. Yeah. So it's like,
Or the 80s.
Script, I think you're right.
Well, that could be.
Yeah, that's a good point, Script, that they brutalized Batman, or they made Batman a bit too brutal for my tastes.
Yeah,
that was the whole reason we did Knightfall, was to show the fans this isn't the Batman you want. And consequently, Knightfall was extraordinarily successful because the fans aren't stupid. You know, they were like, this is why we don't want Batman to be a tortured psychotic loner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love Knightfall because I read that when I had to get my tonsils out, and it cheered me up a lot.
I can relate.
Yeah, can you tell us about that real quickly? Like the difference between writing the Punisher for Marvel and Knightfall for DC, since we're on that topic.
Well, I mean, there was discussion at the summits early on in Knightfall that this was an opportunity to show the fans that they didn't want Batman to be Frank Castle. They didn't want Batman to be like the Punisher. And so we were going to bring them a Punisher like Batman for a while. And they hated it. The sales plummeted. We had to end the stunt 6 months early because sales were falling so swiftly because they hated this character. But before that, the common thread amongst fans was, well, get rid of Robin and Alfred and just have him be, a badass all on his own. It's like, no, you think you want that, but you don't. And Knightfall was basically the proof. to everybody that this Batman is best left as a triumvirate of Batman, Alfred, and Robin.
Neil Adams era.
Yeah.
That was a great run of Batman.
Yeah, which managed to be, grim and dark and everything else, but didn't leave all the other aspects behind.
And also, it's just one thing to note that for Batman being an aspirational hero and a detective, it's kind of counterintuitive to make tortured and psychologically damaged at the same time.
Yeah.
He can have issues, which is great that he's dealing with, but the fact that he's dealing with them and overcoming them with them, in addition to doing this quest of trying to protect Gotham, is what makes him heroic, and not just being able to beat up weaker criminals that are on the street mugging old ladies as they're walking home. He does more than that, and I think that's what makes him fascinating and why he's been able to stand the test of time for 80 plus years.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, the Pattinson Batman was a bit too tortured for me.
Yeah.
Also,
I don't like sad heroes.
Yeah, and he tortured the audience along with it, unfortunately. That was the problem.
You took my joke, Tom. You dirty.
Oh, I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
nice cover.